In India, you really have to navigate many different aspects of your life, of your social life, because everything is so social. Like one of the things I would like to describe is the idea of being so surrounded by people all the time. Because our population is so huge, and that being so foreign to me, where in the US, I could find myself for miles alone and not encounter another human being. And here, being desperate to find that one space where I could just see no other person and just be alone with my thoughts. And that was a big struggle. So the freedom to be was a big challenge to find in India, in the sense of the freedom to just be by yourself, to be with your thoughts, and to be alone and introspect. And what I realized then is that I have to just navigate my life through this crowded streets, through this crowded social environment that I'm in. And the way I did that finally, and the way I've come to terms with it, is to find like-minded people and just surround myself with people who are as similar to me or who accept me in as many ways as they can. And that's one way in which you can mirror yourself in others. And that's what I've done. So all the way from actually finding the friends that can support me, the friends who accept me for who I am, for my ideas, for my beliefs, and for my orientation, to even finding a partner now, to finding my boyfriend that I'm living with. So again, finding that kind of compatibility that allows you to be free and be who you are. India is, in a sense, open to your emotional kind of sharing of your emotional stories and your personal life. And in that sense, yes, it's a nice place to be, because I do like this union of bonds and emotional connections that you create among people. But at the same time, I also respect and I like the Western notion of having your own freedoms, your individuality respected, and your freedom to live the way you choose to live. So that is something that in India, perhaps you may not get. The freedom to be who you are, even though they want to know who you are, but they may not allow you to be that, and they may not allow you to go in that direction or say certain things. So there is this tension between the East and the West in various aspects of how the individual thrives. And I think there are good parts to both that we can take. I personally think I was born in a very conservative Christian family, right, in a Catholic family. So I believe that coming out of Christianity, coming out of Catholicism, coming to terms with sexuality, coming to terms with my atheism, there were so many struggles that I've kind of dealt with, grappled with, and I've come to terms with. I feel that there is a benefit in my sharing that, even if it is not called upon, just because sometimes I think the person may not feel comfortable asking me these questions, and I don't want to put the onus of discomfort on them. So a lot of times I'm more forthcoming than is necessary. And it is just my little way of trying to spread greater acceptance for all of these issues of your life, your religion, your beliefs, your sexuality, just so that there's open conversations, just so that there is a possibility of you sharing something with me that also will help you open up to me, and that will also then strengthen our bonds together. I think India has a huge population of LGBT individuals. Now, if you look at our greater population, it's just about 1.2 billion people. And by most estimates, around 10% of every population is one of the members of the LGBT community. Actually, the transgendered community has a slightly lower incidence of prevalence. So if you think of the sheer number of people who have a very different perspective about life, who are not part of your mainstream in the way that they think, in the way that they aspire to different goals, in the way in which they prefer certain forms of art, or certain forms of expression, there's a huge market there that is just being ignored. And if corporations, or if an economy, market economy, begins to cater to that audience will become incredibly loyal. And for every corporation or for any private company to have a huge loyal following is like a jackpot. So if you look at United Colors of Benetton as one very famous example, their latest campaign was of inclusivity. Their latest advertising campaign, where they had very prominent citizens in the Unhate campaign, they showed that they are unafraid to include the alternative section of societies. And when you begin to include them, when you begin to give us that kind of visibility, we become very loyal to you. So when we are here as the LGBT community consuming material that has been produced for the mainstream or for the heterosexual community, we feel marginalized, we feel invisible. So when you're producing, say, movies that do not reflect our aspirations, that do not reflect our culture, we consume them to the extent that we can, but we prefer better. We prefer something else. So when there is a queer film festival, for example, we go there in hordes. We ignore other movies that's happening. And so if you look at India, the tourism industry, the telecommunications industry, the internet industry have a lot to benefit from marketing to LGBT communities, because the LGBT individuals are looking to connect with each other across boundaries. I'm looking to connect with somebody in Delhi or somebody in Nepal, so I'll use your telephone provider, I'll use the internet to connect with them over Facebook perhaps. So there are all of these, like I'll travel more often to those cities where I have friends who are like me. So there are all of these industries that if they actually examined the market, there are huge potentials there to be exploited. And I think you will be rewarded with loyalty, and you will be rewarded with respect, and you will be then, they will actually become amplifiers of your brand, and they will become actually free advertisers of your brand. I definitely think freedom is a precondition to individual security, because you can be fully secure in a prison cell and you don't have any freedom, right? So if given the choice between freedom and security, I pick freedom first, and then I will fight for security, because as a prisoner in a prison cell, you are very safe, but you're not free, and that's not any kind of life to live. And I say that with the understanding that yes, for some people, coming out or living in a certain kind of a lifestyle in certain societies might be dangerous, might be financially dangerous, might be physically dangerous. And I say that I would recommend that everybody calculate the risks that they need to do that, but look at it in terms of a long term. How do you want to live for the rest of your life? Do you always want to live in the shadows? Do you always want to live without being visible, without being known, without being seen? And I think asking those questions and asking what your priorities lie will help you come up with a solution. And I know that LGBT rights and typically coming out has always been associated with the left movement, and the movement associated with typically with socialism or with communism. Typically those are the parties that voice the concerns of the LGBT community. But we libertarians, we activists for freedom, have a huge contribution to make, and actually a better contribution and defense for LGBT rights, which is one of the reasons why I am so vocal about this aspect of my life. The media has a duty, and I wouldn't say it has a political duty, but it has a social duty to have every aspect of society actually and accurately portrayed. And that's just being part of what news journalism means, to showcase the society in the way in which it is. And I do think that the media plays a huge role in how discourse is shaped in a society. So I would expect actually media journalists and people who shape these discourses to be more informed, to be well aware about the issues of the day, about LGBT or about the Dalits or about caste system, and to bring up their stories to the mainstream, because often they are marginalized because they are so much fewer. Because we make such a small part of the population that's more mainstream, our stories often get muffled. And I think part of responsible media and journalism would be then to shed some light onto our stories as well. And I think in that sense, that's just called good journalism. I think that's just called responsible, conscientious journalism. So while being a libertarian, I would have no political duties upon them, but I would definitely call upon them to a higher standard of journalism, which I think is something that one should aspire to anyway as an individual.